Hello, it is me, Thomas Chinawith. This is for the UF video 100 about history and doing stuff with it. So in the video and in the reading, um, we talked about having history not just be facts and cards and just memorizing people's names and what that means. And that's like a wahoo thing to be talking about because like a lot of the time history is kind of just boiled down into like this is what they did and this is what they did and this is the day that that happened and all that stuff, and that's how we say in Albuquerque, boring. So it's nice to like have like talk about history in a sense that is meaningful to people. And I think in a way that makes it meaningful is understanding that history is just made up of people and their stories, and understanding that those people have lives and all that other stuff. Um, and I think the best ways to think about a person, and their story is to think about context and causality. I'm putting those two together because I think they're pretty similar. But then what I'll talk about first is change over time. So I think in history it's really important to look at the change that happens over time and what that means for humanity. So, like example, a really big change that happened in history would have been the dropping of the atomic bomb on Japan during World War II, which brought a swift end to World War II. But it also launched humanity into the atomic era, and it like the Cold War, all of that stuff, you know. And so looking at that change and understanding that like it was a huge change for humanity and it happened very fast, and how that like it was hard to, I think, keep up with all of that stuff, but understanding that that change was really important to humanity, like a turning point in coming from early 1900s when we were like wearing 20s, like flapper dresses, all that, like speakeasies, like just coming out of the Victorian era, like Downton Abbey, you know. um, and then into the era of like computers and um, cars that didn't look like chariots or whatever those are called, carriages. um, and that was a really quick change. It happened within like 100 years. This huge amount of change happened, and I think the turning point was World War II and the dropping of the atomic bomb, when this new technology became available to people. But it also brought intense tension with like Russia and the United States, these two superpowers in the world, that were kind of using pawns of like Vietnam and Korea and all these other things, that happened to cause like that were a result of this change. And so I think it's important when you're like when you're looking at a person, understanding how they change throughout time, and understanding why they change is very important, which leads us into causality and context. Wahoo wahoo. So when I think another very large factor of history and an important thing to look at when you're studying history is causality and context of a situation. I think they're pretty similar. The description on the website was like different technically, but I think that they are similar enough to put them in the same video or the same section. So context and causality are basically the why of something happens in history. So when you're looking, you can understand, basically you can learn about the dropping of the atomic bomb and the like atomic era and Cold War stuff. Um, but understanding why that all happened, I think, is also very important to history and is a necessary part of being a historian, which we're all aspiring to be. So, using the example of the dropping of the atomic bomb and what happened afterwards, you'd have to understand, like, to understand why that happened and why it caused the change it did. You'd have to look at the context of World War II and the struggle between the Japanese in the Pacific and America. Because when I said it brought a swift end to World War II, I meant the Pacific part of World War II between America and Japan. And so you'd have to understand like why that struggle was such a there was so much tension there, and the decisions that went into the factors that went into why the end result was dropping that huge massive weapon, and killing so many people, destroying so much history and culture with it. But then to understand World War II, you have to understand World War One, and you have to understand like the Geneva Convention, Geneva, yeah, I think Geneva Convention, and how the like because people kind of like were like, screw you, Germany, Germany was like, screw you, Jews, and caused World War II. So, you know, but understanding all the context of that is how you understand why all those things caused the atomic bomb and why it caused the Cold War afterwards. You have to understand why Russia was mad at the Allies and all this other stuff. So it's important to know. And so you have to understand the deeper meanings of why things happened, and that's causality and context. Do history. It's good for you.